Will Caitlin Clark come into the WNBA and do what she's doing right now? Immediately? Absolutely not. So for people to come at me and say that I made those comments because I'm a racist, like, first of all, black people can't be racist. My best childhood friend is white. I have no issues with Caitlin because there was a big debate on Lynette Woodard having the actual record.
Her clarification is every bit as dumb and problematic as her original criticism of Caitlin Clark.
Sheryl Swoopes, a basketball legend, just took a shot at Caitlin Clark, but did she miss the mark? Jason Whitlock thinks so, and he's not holding back. Let's break down this heated clash between basketball icons. Let's dive into what Sheryl Swoopes actually said about Caitlin Clark. Her comment sent shockwaves through the basketball world, and for good reason. Swoopes, a basketball legend herself, made some pretty bold claims about Clark's success. According to Swoopes, Clark's achievements weren't all they were cracked up to be. She said Clark was a 25-year-old player in her 5th year, taking about 40 shots a game, but here's the kicker. Those statements are just plain wrong. And the truth, Clark is actually 22 years old and in her 4th year as a senior, and those 40 shots per game, not even close. Clark averages about 22.6 shots per game. That's a big difference from what Swoopes claimed. So why would Swoopes make these inaccurate statements? It's got a lot of people scratching their heads. Is it just a simple mistake, or is there something more going on here? Some are pointing to generational differences. Swoopes comes from a different era of women's basketball. The game has changed a lot since her playing days. Maybe she's having trouble adjusting to the new style of play that players like Clark represent. Others think it might be about the changing landscape of women's basketball. The sport is evolving, and with that comes new stars and new ways of playing. Could Swoopes be feeling left behind or threatened by these changes? Swoopes also made some interesting comments about expectations. She said, "When you put these expectations on these young women in college to go to the next level and be immediately dominant, when that doesn't happen, people come back and say, oh, she was a bust, she was a flop, she wasn't that good." Now, that's a fair point about the pressure young players face, but it's weird to apply it to Clark, who's been dominating college basketball. It's like Swoopes is preparing excuses for Clark's potential struggles before she's even faced them. The backlash to Swoopes' comments was swift and fierce. Basketball fans and analysts were quick to point out the factual errors. Many questioned why a respected figure like Swoopes would make such easily disproven claims. But the controversy didn't stop there. It sparked a much larger debate about race in women's basketball. Some people started asking uncomfortable questions. Was there more to Swoopes' criticism than just basketball? Was race playing a role in how she viewed Clark's success? And these questions opened up a whole new can of worms. Suddenly, we weren't just talking about one player criticizing another. We were diving into deeper issues about how race impacts perceptions of talent and success in women's basketball. As the controversy around Swoopes' comments exploded, things took an unexpected turn. Swoopes found herself facing accusations of racism, but her response, it only added fuel to the fire. In a shocking statement, Swoopes claimed that black people can't be racist. Let that sink in for a moment. It's a bold claim, and one that sparked intense debate, not just in the basketball world, but far beyond. This isn't just about sports anymore. We're diving into deep, complex issues of race and power dynamics. Swoopes' statement raises so many questions. What exactly does she mean? And more importantly, what are the implications of such a claim? But think about it. If we accept this idea, what does that mean for discussions about racial equality? How does it impact our understanding of discrimination and prejudice? These are heavy questions, and they're causing quite a stir in the basketball community and beyond. But hold on, because Jason Whitlock wasn't about to let this slide. He came out swinging, calling Swoopes a dumb jock for her comments. Ouch. That's a harsh criticism coming from a fellow sports figure. Whitlock didn't stop there. He accused Swoopes of something he calls racial idolatry. What does that mean? According to Whitlock, it's when someone makes race an idol, putting it above everything else. He argues that this kind of thinking can actually lead to a form of bigotry. Now, Whitlock's not pulling any punches here. He's suggesting that Swoopes is using her race as a shield, a way to avoid being held accountable for her inaccurate statements about Caitlin Clark. It's a serious accusation, and it's got people talking, but here's where things get really interesting. Whitlock's not just criticizing Swoopes, he's taking aim at the entire culture of the WNBA. And let me tell you, his comments are explosive. Whitlock claims there's a super strong, angry lesbian culture in the WNBA. Whoa, and that's a controversial statement if I've ever heard one, and it's got major implications for players like Caitlin Clark who are looking to make their mark in the league. Think about it. If Whitlock's right, what does that mean for the future of women's basketball? How might it affect rising stars like Clark? And more importantly, is there any truth to his claims? claims? These are big questions, and they're causing a lot of debate in the sports world. Some people are backing Whitlock, while others are calling him out. It's a heated discussion, and it's far from over. Now let's talk about Jason Whitlock's explosive claims about the WNBA culture. Whitlock didn't hold back when he shared his thoughts on the league, and his words have sparked a firestorm of controversy. Whitlock boldly stated that there's a super strong, angry lesbian culture in the WNBA. That's a pretty intense accusation, right? He's not just talking about the players on the court, he's pointing fingers at the entire culture surrounding the league. But why is Whitlock making these claims? And more importantly, what could they mean for rising stars like Caitlin Clark? According to Whitlock, this culture he's describing could create a hostile environment for players like Clark. He's suggesting that when Clark transitions to the WNBA, she might face some serious challenges, not just from other players, but from the media too. Whitlock argues that the media might scrutinize Clark's performance more harshly than her male counterparts. That's a pretty serious accusation. If true, it could have a big impact on Clark's career and how she's perceived by fans. But here's where things get even more complicated. Whitlock is hinting that players who don't fit into certain identity groups might struggle to find acceptance in the WNBA. That's a loaded statement, and it's got people talking. Some folks are backing Whitlock up, saying he's just telling it like it is. They argue that these are issues the WNBA needs to address if it wants to grow and attract top talent. On the other hand, plenty of people are calling Whitlock out. They say his comments are offensive and based on stereotypes, not facts. Critics argue that Whitlock is painting the entire WNBA with a broad brush, ignoring the diversity within the league. So what does all this mean for women's basketball as a whole? Well, it's certainly stirring up some intense debates about culture, identity, and inclusivity in sports. Some people are worried that controversies like this could turn potential fans away from women's basketball. Others argue that these discussions, while uncomfortable, are necessary for the sport to grow and evolve. And let's not forget about the players themselves. How might all this drama affect their performance on the court? Will it change how they interact with each other, with fans, with the media? These are big questions and they don't have easy answers. But one thing's for sure, this controversy is forcing people to take a hard look at the culture of women's basketball. It's not just about what happens during the games anymore. We're talking about the atmosphere in the locker rooms, the dynamics between players, and how the league presents itself to the world. The fallout from this controversy has been intense, with reactions pouring in from all corners of the basketball world. Fans, players, and analysts are all weighing in on Swoopes' comments about Clark and Whitlock's explosive claims about the WNBA culture. It's like a storm hit the basketball community, and everyone's trying to figure out which way the wind is blowing. Some are defending Swoopes, arguing that her status as a basketball legend gives her the right to speak her mind. Others are calling her out for spreading misinformation about Clark. It's a real divide, and it's got people talking about more than just basketball. But here's the thing, being a legend doesn't mean you're above criticism. In fact, it might mean you need to be even more careful about what you say. Why? Because people look up to you, they trust your opinion, and when you get things wrong, it can have a big impact. That's where accountability comes in. It doesn't matter if you're a Hall of Famer or a rookie. If you're in the public eye, you've got a responsibility to get your facts straight, especially when you're talking about other players. Now let's talk about Whitlock. His comments about the WNBA culture have sparked a whole different kind of debate. Some people are nodding their heads, saying he's just saying what everyone's thinking. Others are furious, calling his statements offensive and harmful. But here's the question we need to ask. Is Whitlock being held accountable for his words? Are we applying the same standards to him that we're applying to Swoopes? It's important to think about these things because they shape how we talk about sports and the athletes who play them. So what does all this mean for the future of women's basketball? Well, it could have some pretty big impacts. For rising stars like Caitlin Clark, it might change how they approach their careers in the WNBA. Will they feel welcomed and supported, or will they worry about facing criticism and scrutiny based on factors beyond their control? And what about the fans? Will this controversy turn some people away from women's basketball, or could it actually draw more attention to the sport and the issues it's facing? These are tough questions, but they're important ones, because at the end of the day, this isn't just about Swoopes, Whitlock, or even Clark. It's about the future of women's basketball as a whole. So what can we learn from all this drama? First off, it's clear that words matter. When public figures speak, people listen, and those words can have real consequences, both good and bad. Second, we need to think hard about accountability in sports. It's not just about calling people out when they make mistakes. It's about creating a culture where everyone, from players to commentators to fans, feels responsible for making the sport better. And finally, we need to remember that sports don't exist in a vacuum. They're part of our wider culture, and the issues we see in sports often reflect bigger issues in society. By talking about these things openly and honestly, maybe we can start to make some real changes.